Transforming your life with hypnotherapy just got easier with your host, Julie from CoachingHypnosis.net.
Welcome back, dear listener, to Coaching Hypnosis. Today, we break down the clinical, psychological and legal postmortem of the infamous Paul Ingram case. Now, let's look at the baseline profile of Paul Ingram in 1988 in Olympia, Washington. He wasn't a marginalized, easy confused outsider. He was a highly respected, conservative, deeply religious chief civil deputy for the Thurston County Sheriff's Department. He was a man of the law, a pillar of his church, and a devoted family man. Yet, when his two daughters, heavily influenced by the swirling, hyper-frenetic media narratives of the satanic panic, suddenly accused him of years of bizarre, ritualistic cult abuse, Ingram didn't react with the immediate defensive outrage of an innocent man. He didn't hire a high-powered defense attorney and demand physical evidence. Instead, because of his profound respect for authority and his rigid religious conditioning, he sat down in an interrogation room and told his investigators, "I don't remember doing any of these things, but if my daughters and the church say I did them, I must have repressed the memories." What followed is one of the most chilling disasters in history of forensic psychology. Over the course of months of coercive questioning, isolated confinement, and pastoral interventions, Ingram's critical faculty completely imploded. He didn't just confess to get out of the room, my friends. He entered a deep, self-induced, autosuggestive waking trance. He began producing detailed, multi-page, vivid descriptions of graphic ritual crimes, sacrificing newborn babies and running an international cult. He became a factory for his own damnation. Today, we decode the raw, neurolinguistic and cognitive methods of autosuggestive confabulation. To understand how Paul Ingram managed to completely override his own memory ledger, you have to look at the jaw-dropping, unscientific environment of his interrogation. The detectives handling the case weren't running a standard objective police investigation. They brought in a resident cult expert and a charismatic pastor from Ingram's own church. They kept Ingram isolated in a cell for days, drowning him in chronic sleep deprivation and relentless emotional guilt. Then they would sit him down in the interrogation room, hold hands in a prayer circle, and tell him that his memory gaps were the literal work of demonic repression. This strategy was simple, continuous, and toxic. They told him that if he loved God, loved his family, and wanted to be saved, he had to clear his mind, stop resisting, and pray for the visual images of his crimes to appear in his mind's eye. He created a devastating real-time feedback loop of self-induced trance generation. Stage 1, the authority compliance trap. Subject a deeply religious, highly compliant individual to intense isolation, sleep deprivation, and authoritative demands that they must be guilty. Stage 2, the mental visualization directive. Instruct the target to close their eyes and imagine how the crime would have looked, forcing the brain to run a high-intensity fluid visualization script. Stage 3, the autosuggestive memory rewrite. The subconscious deletes the imaginary tag, hard-coding the vividly rehearsed fantasies into the actual memory ledger with an unassailable feeling of truth. When Ingram closed his eyes in that highly suggestible high-stress state and tried to force himself to see the crimes, he wasn't retrieving hidden memories. He was engaging in intense autosuggestion. His brain was given a clear, urgent directive: produce a memory of satanic ritual, or you are a damned soul who hates his daughters. To resolve that catastrophic psychological tension, his subconscious mind tapped into his imagination, his knowledge of police cases, and the horror movie tropes popular on television at the time. He began painting vivid mental pictures. Let's look at the absolute sarcastic and deeply unsettling absurdity of how the system processed this data. Ingram would drop into a trance, visualize a horrific scene, open his eyes and say, "Yep, I'm starting to see it. We wore black robes. We sacrificed a baby on the altar." The detectives didn't stop and ask for trivial details like, yep, I don't know where the physical bodies of these alleged babies were located. Instead, they cheered, praised his spiritual breakthrough, and told him to go back into his cell and write down more memories for the next day. Ingram became so profoundly conditioned to this loop that he spent his nights in his cell running his own self-hypnotic scripts, actively dreaming up, rehearsing and refining his own fictional crimes to please his interrogators. The absolute turning point of this madness came when a brilliant skeptical forensic psychologist named Dr. Richard Ofshie was brought in to evaluate the case. Dr. Ofshie looked at the mounting stack of wild, evidence-free confessions and realized something was profoundly broken. He decided to run a controlled clinical test on Ingram's suggestibility. Dr. Ofshie sat across from Ingram and completely fabricated a brand new, entirely ridiculous accusation out of thin air. He told Ingram, Paul, your son and daughter have just testified they remember a time when you forced them to watch you and another deputy participate in a ritualistic sexual act in a specific basement last year. The crime was a complete fiction. It had never happened and nobody ever alleged it. But look at how Ingram's conditioned autosuggestive software responded. He initially said he couldn't remember it. Dr. Ofshie applied the standard script, close your eyes, Paul, pray on it, visualize. Ingram closed his eyes, dropped into a waking trance. About 20 minutes later, he opened them and delivered a highly detailed, deeply emotional 3-page written confession detailing the exact layout of the fictional basement, the dialogue spoken and the specific actions he committed. He had become an absolute automatic machine for generating his own guilt. As strategic hypnotists and modern clinical performance coaches, we must look past the bizarre occult window dressing of this case to analyze the precise cognitive mechanisms that allowed Ingram to completely dismantle his own sanity. The Ingram case stands as science's most definitive warning of how the subconscious mind can be driven to execute its own destruction when its reality testing framework is intentionally shattered. The total collapse of reality monitoring framework. Under normal operating conditions, your prefrontal cortex runs a cognitive script called reality monitoring. It is the gatekeeper that differentiates between an internal thought, a dream, or a movie you watched, and an actual external physical event. By trapping Ingram in a high cortisol, sleep-deprived state and forcing him to repeatedly visualize the crimes, the authorities completely erased his reality monitoring capacity. The imagined images, the real memories melted into one single distorted truth table. The power of autosuggestive reinforcement. Hypnosis is fundamentally the suspension of the critical faculty paired with the acceptance of an idea. In Ingram's case, the suggestion didn't just come from the outside. It came from an internal mandate because he believed his own salvation depended on his guilt. His subconscious actively worked against his own innocence, using its immense creative and emotional power to build a flawless, unassailable fortress of false memories. The danger of confession-seeking trance loops. When an interrogation room transitions from a fact-finding exercise into a high-pressure, suggestion-driven trance loop, accuracy drops to absolute zero. The subject learns that the only way to end the psychological suffering and achieve safety is to produce the data the authority demands, and if the pressure is sustained enough, the mind will actually alter its own biological data structure to ensure that compliance feels genuine. Despite Dr. Ofshie providing beyond any scientific doubt that Ingram's confessions were entirely manufactured fabrications of highly suggestible self-hypnotized mind, the legal machinery refused to admit its mistake. Paul Ingram, trapped in his own installed delusion, pled guilty to multiple counts of third-degree rape, was sentenced to 20 years in prison. He served more than a decade in a concrete cell for crimes that the FBI and independent scientific groups explicitly concluded never occurred in physical reality. The profound, heavy lesson of the Paul Ingram case is a visceral, urgent warning that the integrity of your mind, your self-trust, and your internal reality must be fiercely, aggressively protected, and the second you allow external pressures, authority figures, or intense emotional guilt to tell you that your own clear, conscious logic is wrong, you're opening the door to total psychological collapse. Any mentor, culture, or system that demands you disregard your own present reality, doubt your fundamental sanity, or adopt a script of brokenness to achieve validation is running a deeply predatory program. True strength will always anchor you in your present clarity, validate your independent vision, and make you the absolute unassailable director of your own truth. True, unshakable leadership is about cognitive boundaries, knowing how to protect your self-trust from external pollution, defend your mind against collective narratives, and execute your vision from a place of absolute, uncompromised sovereignty. If you've realized that you're navigating high-performance professional pressure by letting external criticisms, market panics, or conditioned narratives of unworthiness make you doubt your own strategic execution, wasting your immense mental energy on manufactured self-doubt, second-guessing your decisions because a loud voice told you that your instincts are wrong, or letting an exhausted corporate script run your life on autopilot. It is time to step out of the suggestion loop and reclaim your sovereign mind. If you're ready to clear that cognitive fog, stabilize your nervous system against the noise, and lead your business with a sharp, independent, and completely unburdened mind, I invite you to book your free 40-minute clarity call. Together, we'll dismantle the external conditioning, ground your identity in undeniable present self-trust, and install a powerful, unshakable subconscious identity focused entirely on your true present sovereign authority. Remember, aligned subconscious plus healed history equals unshakable leadership. Thank you for listening. Align your mind. Visualize your future. Grow your business. Mindfully yours, Julie.